I'm Senator Diane Rosenbaum, Chair of the Commerce and Workforce Development Committee.
I know your committee will be hearing it, and you're the chief sponsor. There are quite a few others on Senate Bill 966. As you recall, last time there was a different proposal with the same objectives that did not get through the 2007 legislature. Do you think some of the objections raised then are answered in this legislation? I guess that's the first question.
Well, in the first place, the bill did actually pass the House, it very narrowly failed in the Senate. It only failed by 2 votes. So we're hopeful that the momentum that's built from that, and also all the work that's gone into this bill, will carry us over. I think in terms of the objections, essentially the arguments have not changed, and they're not any more valid now than they were 2 years ago. There are things like the California system is going bankrupt, which it's not. We've had the head of the agency in California both testifying, writing, calling to people saying, no, we're in very healthy shape. And you've heard from employers today who've said that they operate in California where the system's been in effect for years and they haven't seen a problem because of it. So I think that, the real subtext of the arguments against this are really kind of a subterfuge for not wanting to see people be able to take advantage of the 12 weeks of unpaid time that we're arguing people can't afford to take right now. And if what you don't want to see is people taking the time that they need when they have a new baby or a loved one is dying, then I think we simply disagree, and we think that most Oregonians are with us.
Do you think the 2012 start date, if I read that correctly, would answer some of the objections?
We think that the way the bill is designed now has ample time for the system to be set up, for funding to be more than adequate. We're using projections that are well thought out. We're working with economists from national organizations to make sure that we have a sustainable system. So we think that we're on very sound ground.
How did you change the bill from 2007?
Essentially, there are a few changes. One is that the benefit went up slightly. Since the minimum wage has gone up, we now have a benefit of approximately $300 a week for somebody working full-time. That's about what a minimum wage worker is making after taxes. And the contribution rate is 2 cents an hour to accommodate for that slightly higher benefit, as well as for a reserve to ensure that we have more than enough to start the system and fund it, and a provision that the labor commissioner who will be testifying this afternoon can lower the rates, that once we see this is up and working, that the rate can be adjusted downward, and that's what we fully expect to happen.
So you really didn't make any changes then in an attempt to try to get more support for, so essentially it's the same bill though. You didn't change it in any substantive way in an attempt to try to get more support.
The basic structure is the same as what we were proposing, because we think it was a sound structure last time.
And why do you exempt small employers? If this is in essence a deduction that comes out of employee salaries and is handled by the state, so there's no administrative cost to employers, why does it matter whether you're in a firm with 25 or more employers or not?
Well, a couple of things. One is that we wanted to, as closely as possible, mirror the eligibility criteria for the Oregon Family Leave Law, and that does kick in at a 25 or more employee threshold. But we do have a provision in this bill that says that smaller employers can opt in a second phase. We have lots of support from small employers who voluntarily want to participate in this, so we think that we'll eventually be able to bring in everybody under that provision.
The costs of administering it, how are those covered?
The same 2 cents per hour that we have talked about as the initial startup is going to be more than adequate to cover the startup costs too. And we do have the Bureau of Labor and Industries, the Labor Commissioner Brad Avakian will be testifying this afternoon to talk about implementation.
What would you tell people who don't have children in their life necessarily, or aged people who are having health issues and have another payroll tax that they are looking at? and maybe reluctant, as well-intended as it may be, reluctant to take that upon themselves.
Well, I would say that whether you have children or not, everybody has families. Everybody comes from a family. So whether it's your parents, your brother or your sister, grandparents too, then somebody in your family is eventually going to need you to be at their bedside when they have cancer or are in the hospital, and I don't think any of us wants to leave those precious family members alone at a time like that because we have to be at work and can't afford to be there. So I think everybody potentially needs this bill. And that's the answer.
Yeah. Just so people can understand, is there not a private sector solution to this? I mean, do you have any sort of comparisons on what it would cost somebody to, or is it even available? It may not be, to try to obtain some sort of insurance that would cover this in any other way, or is it just simply not obtainable?
Well, I think there are private insurance plans. The question is who can actually afford to take advantage of them. And as we heard from some of the speakers this afternoon, being with your children when they need you or your parents when they need you ought not to be a luxury that's only available to people who can afford it. We think it's basic. It's something that every Oregonian is entitled to.
And it would start in 2012? Is that when
The benefits would start to pay out in 2012. That's correct. Okay. Well, we hope to see you at our hearing we'll be starting in half an hour at 3 o'clock.